Hello, dear Weirdiners. I just wanted to give you a free episode of the Patreon bonus. This is just to give you a little idea of what you're missing if you're not a subscriber, so you can hear the quality that awaits you at patreon.com/weirdrap for just $3 tiny dollars, just $3. Plus you get all the past bonus episodes featuring exclusive interviews with people like Antipop Consortium, Dose One, Big Just, Orko, New Kingdom, etc. Not only that, you get the Weird Rap Discussion Gang After Hours episodes, and even more stuff for just $3. And here you go. This is the latest Weird Rap bonus episode, which continues my talk with the amazing rapper, producer, poet, Mike Ladd. Hey, it's your Weird Rap bonus episode. You're about to hear more of my talk with Mike Ladd. We're going to get into some of his personal and professional struggles, more of the twists and turns that his life has taken, and all sorts of things. I hope you find it as fascinating as I did, and thank you so much for being a patron. I love you. Addiction. I think it's something that a lot of artists seem to deal with for one reason or another. I've dealt with it myself in various forms, and you've talked about in the past dealing with your own journey through drug addiction. I thought it could be interesting to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I miss hallucinogens. I mean, I really liked what they helped me do musically. And if I ever get to the point where I could take drugs again, I'd just take mushrooms.
Yeah.
And then maybe some acid and some MDMA. But like that's what I miss.
But you're completely straight edge for now.
Since November 1st, 2001. And shout out to Creaturenomics, who's kept me sober in some ways, just like he's another brother in arms. Creature got sober a year after I did. Dan got sober the year before I did. And having those long-term friends, you know, knowing that someone's coming up on 21 years, someone else is coming up on 19 years. And I know both those guys won't mind people knowing, so I said it.
Shout out to Creaturenomics too. He's a great rapper as well.
Yep.
Leave you and die straight. Pride, hate, I relate. Eyes closed, wide awake. I was sick, need an hour break. Felt out of place and out of space. No shower breaks. This is how power tastes. Why the dour face angel with a dirty face?
Creech really gets it, man.
But how did it start? How did you start getting involved with drugs, or what even were the substances?
It was high school. Oh, this is 70s. So like we used to drink beer. We'd be like 5, 6, 7. You're drinking beer because people are hippies and shit. There's no rules.
Sure.
No fucking rules. And they used to call me Michelob because there used to be a beer called Michelob. I don't know if it still exists.
I think there's still Michelob.
They were like, oh, it's Michelob. Give him some beer. So, you know, we were getting drunk early, and then first weed I smoked when I was like 10 or 11. I had a babysitter who was awesome. She was the best. At the time, I was living with my aunt most of the time, and my mother was dean of Wellesley College, dean of students, all women's school. So it's just full of brilliant women, and I was like 10 and 11, so opportunity completely missed. But I had these incredible genius babysitters, and I had this one babysitter who was studying Stalinism, the sister from Cleveland, Ohio, little black woman, big Coke bottle glasses, and she'd come down the stairs and she'd be like, what is Stalinism? And me and my mom would be like, we ponder it. You know? And then one time she and her friend took me, she had to go see a movie for school, and they're getting high. And they're just like, here, have, you know, let's be funny. Let's give it to the 11-year-old. Here, you have some of this. You got high. Man, I was high as fuck. And we went and saw Battleship Potemkin. We which is, it's a Soviet propaganda movie. That was mind blowing. So I enjoyed that, and then and so I started smoking a lot of weed, and then I think I took acid for the first time. I must have been 14, 15 when I took acid for the first time, and we went and saw Tommy. And as far as I remember, the Gypsy Acid Queen sequence just continued for the rest of the movie. Like I saw Tina Turner in every part of that movie afterwards. Like I don't remember Robert Daltrey running around, and he was just, I'm the Gypsy Acid Queen, 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 forever. And like the whole part where the beans came out of the TV, I had to get out of my seat. I was like, yo. So that started that thing. And then, and it really kicked in with the music. I discovered, I've said this in 1,000 interviews, talking about discovering Sly Stone version of Sex Machine, and then discovering Funkadelic. And so as soon as I got heavy into Funkadelic, everything just made sense.
So your formative drug experiences were just fun. It wasn't like an escape from some kind of depression or anything that you found. It was just like entertaining.
Yeah, on a surface level, yeah. I mean, clearly I was trying to fill a void, which the therapist would tell you had to do with the death of my father.
Right.
And, something there. Just basically my dad died when I was 1, and it was me and just my mom for like 5 years. So like all that sort of primordial time, it was super lonely. But that's not what I was thinking about at the time at all. I was having fun. I wasn't, my childhood after that was, from like 5 on was fantastic. I had a good time. And I had a good time when I was taking these drugs. It wasn't until I got to college that I was on a serious 70s kick. This is embarrassing. Anyway, I took heroin. I knew I wanted to take heroin after I read Kerouac. Like it was all arts related. I started drinking extra heavily after I saw Barfly. Like it was all like connected to different things. And then I saw freshman year of college, and I took heroin, and we watched Superfly, and I thought I was the coolest person in the world. It was like 1988. I'm like, this is cool. It wasn't, but it sure felt like it was cool at the time. And then I ended up having a minor, it was very minor, but a minor heart attack when I was 26 from doing speedballs. And that's when I knew it was time to slow down.
Yeah.
But it still took me 5 years to actually quit the alcohol. And I quit alcohol because I was on tour, and I found myself in I think it was in Linz, Austria, which is like Hitler's college town. And I was banging rails on a toilet seat with 2 Austrian women. And then that night just went, pew. I don't remember 90% of what happened, except I remember waking up on the stairs of the train station with all my gear. Like somebody clearly just found my MPC 3000, which is, this massive flight case at the time, and put it in my hand. And I was at the train station. I had to catch a train to get to Vienna to catch a plane. Somehow, miraculously made it to Vienna. My drummer, Damali, and my guitar player at the time, Jalil, were at the airport like, where the fuck have you been? And I got to the U.S., went to the bar with Creature and another friend of ours, Yazid, who's a brilliant, brilliant MC. And we're sitting there drinking. And it's like one of those nights where, those nights where you're trying to drink, and no matter how much you drink, you can't get drunk.
Sure.
You cannot get fucked up.
Yeah.
And I had a vision, clear as day, of the 3 of us having the exact same conversation, which was something like, man, this is what I'm going to do when I blow up. Man, how come you ain't blown up yet? Da-da-da. But about the 3 of us having the exact same conversation 3 years later, but with much cheaper drinks on the street. And I put it down, put the glass down. I was like, all right, I'm going home. The next day I had a show And I was like, all right, I'm going to have these 5 whiskeys. And if the show still sucks, I'm going into treatment tomorrow. And the show still sucked. And that was November 1st, 2001, between the hours of like 10 and 11.
So yeah, you'd chalk it up to those 3 events, the Austria thing, the vision of the future, and then the final just facing the night and seeing if whiskey made it better or not.
Yeah.
That was your bottom, more or less?
Yeah, that was the 48 hours. And I could have found a much worse bottom, I'll tell you that. But, the heart attack was the bottom.
Sure.
Or a warning of something. And so I was already scared, but it took me 5 years to figure it out how to stop.
And so since then you've just considered, any form of substance might lead you back into like a full bore addiction that you don't want to deal with, or why the complete abstinence?
I didn't want to risk it. One, because I think my real drug of choice is alcohol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that one's like, just don't fuck with that. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I also found out that there's other things I'd rather do.
Sure. It's a big waste of time.
Yeah, I realized I didn't really I think the reason I got so fucked up all the time is because I was bored. Sitting at a bar is boring.
Yeah.
Music's too loud. Can't, unless the music's great, why the fuck am I there? Can't have the conversation. My dick's limp, so I'm not fucking anybody. So what the fuck was I doing? Or if I am, I'm not enjoying it, so I can't feel anything. It's like
yeah, it's numbing for sure.
Yeah. And but yeah, there's basically I got into toys. I'm completely addicted to toys.
What do you mean?
I like space, I like toys. I like
action figures?
Nah, well, I make these little worlds and shit.
Oh, like on the Infesticons album cover?
Yes.
Bedford Park?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize you made that yourself. Do those see the light of the public in any other way?
No, they sneak out in little bits and like little. They've been on like covers, like the Nostalgia Later cover.
Okay.
This guy David Healy built that whole thing, and I bumped into him in a toy store once. There's like little shots in like the Dead Can Rap record. There's some shots in.
Okay.
Shout out to Remy Ruff, by the way.
Yeah.
There's one record I did with Vijay where we used some. They sort of sneak out like that.
You involve your kids at all in the
they
toys?
Couldn't give a shit. That's why I love them. That's why they're so cool. They don't care about toys. Oh yeah, whatever. I remember when Maya was about 9. She's like, "Dad," I had to drag her to a toy store. She's like, "I don't want to go." I was like, "Come on, we're just gonna check out some stuff." No, they don't care. My wife is the best. She's like, "Dad's working." Meanwhile, I'm like, building like a little model or modifying some toy I bought, painting it. She's like, "Don't bother father. He's working right now."
Yeah. So you consider that as kind of a replacement addiction?
Yeah,
replacement habit?
It's an addiction. It's a bad enough addiction that for a while I was super into World War II shit because just being here, you sort of get into it. And World War II is this great sort of revealer of the savagery that European exceptionalism tries to hide. And World War II fails miserably at that. You know what I'm saying? And that's part of why the colonies were able to liberate themselves, because people were like, look, these people can't handle themselves. Let's get them off our shoulders. Anyway, I got totally obsessed with World War II. And they were selling these little tanks in like newspaper stands.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing some jazz festival in Rome. And there's a bunch of people, like big players. I can't remember who was there, but like big names, like Archie Shepp level cats. And we're all getting in the bus to go back to the hotel after the gig. It's a festival. There's like a lot of people, a lot of runners. So we're in the van with, it's like a runner van for a festival. All these musicians are in there. And we come to a red light, and it's like midnight, and there's this newsstand open because it's Rome. And And I'm like, stop the bus, stop the bus. And I run out, I run a newsstand, I buy a little tank, and I put it under my coat, and I get back in the bus, and I'm in like a cold sweat, like, okay, Mike, this is a fucking addiction. But it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper.
Yeah. I've been thinking about why it might be that addiction and artistry seem to go hand in hand so much. I guess it's been noted by other people that a lot of artists are addicts. And I've read a little bit recently about like someone's explanation of that is that drugs can be used to ease the pressure of the situation that artists find themselves in a lot of times, from their performance environments to just fame or stage fright.
Saul Williams has my favorite story about that. I guess he was at a show with Dell. I don't know if he was playing with Dell or not.
Mm-hmm.
And Dell was blinking through the whole show. Just like, I don't know if you can see me, but just blinking.
Yeah.
Through the whole damn show. Dell gets off stage and Saul's like, yo, what's wrong with your eyes? You all right? You've been blinking. And Dell was like, yeah, I wanted a strobe light, but they didn't have one, so I just blinked my eyes instead.
Amazing.
Like necessity, man. The necessity for something different.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking is like, I feel like artists are just, they're trying to change reality to some degree, just by doing art,
Yeah.
And that's what drugs are as well.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I certainly got into making music because no one was making what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not true. When I really started, it was just because I was fanning out like everybody else. I was emulating stuff. But why I started making different stuff was just because no one was making what I wanted to hear. And so then I made the record of the music I wanted to hear. And then I just got interested in always making new stuff, stuff that hadn't been made before. And just that was what was important to me. I didn't understand people who sort of remake what's already been done until much later. Now I get it.
How do you get it? What do you make of that?
Well, I had a real revelatory moment. I was at a really famous person's house, and that person had mostly made music that was emulating old stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd never been interested in his records because I was like, man, I have all the originals of what he's doing. But this guy's house was full of memorabilia of the music that he loved. Gold records everywhere, and none of them were his. And he has gold records. And that's when it hit me. Just like, oh my God, this guy's just a fan. This is all an homage, like the Dap Kings and all the guys behind all that stuff. For a long time, I was like, what the fuck you guys doing? This has already been done. It's a waste of time. And I actually had a run-in with one of them. And from his perspective, he was like, what are you doing? You're making weird music that who cares? No one's going to listen to that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just two totally different perspectives. But now I see the value in what he's doing. I don't give a fuck if he sees the value in what I'm doing. But I know that what all of us who were trying to make new stuff, what we did, and ideally what we continue to do is vital. Because it's sort of like it's like crack Reaganomics. It's the trickle-up theory. That that if Kanye didn't hear the Mike Ladd record, someone else heard the Mike Ladd record that influenced that then influenced Kanye.
Right.
And he heard the Death Grips record. He worked with Dead Prez. All these big artists. All the weird shit that we do ends up in there someplace. And the other thing about weird rap is I would guess that most people making weird rap weren't trying to make weird rap. We were just trying to make stuff that we liked.
Sure.
I wanted to make stuff that people hadn't heard before, but I didn't necessarily want to make shit that was, weird just for the sake of being weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a subtle difference there, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I want to make stuff that sounded great when you're high. And then the other thing, too, is, and I think I've talked about this before on different interviews, but, I have this theory that you're trying to always emulate your most formative musical experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like Pharrell, it was probably like dancing with a girl to a Prince and a Michael Jackson song at 12 years old. And she gave him a kiss. He popped a boner. And it was amazing. And like, I got to redo this. Yeah. And for me, I'll never forget, it was like my mom had all these records. I mean, she had this huge record collection. And I would listen just with headphones. It's like 1980. She had this giant corduroy chair. And I remember pulling out certain records that I felt no one else knew. And I would put that record on and would blow my mind. And it was a completely personal experience. And it was an old record. It wasn't something that people were listening to. It was something that I had discovered on my own. There was a sort of archaeological experience to it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to do. It doesn't make you a pop star, but mission accomplished. Like, I'll still get emails or contacts from people like, yo, I just found your record out of nowhere. And, it changed the way I hear music. And I know it's like individual experience. It's like, that's what I was trying to do. Just, here, check this shit out. No one's ever going to know who it is. You're not going to hear about this on the radio, but just here, go blow your mind with that.
Think back to 08. Now which cat was post-race? Recap, post-haste. Delete that, save face. I stick to history, you piss in misery. Miserly with philosophy, generous with atrocity. Possibly rewriting what you ought to be. If he were in the position he ought to be. You proud of me, probably. I'll push it to the top, check the God in me.
I'm definitely a weirdo in the fact that, like, I have a real hard time with social media.
Mm-hmm.
I get anxiety over that shit. It's like Facebook, between my mom's friends, COVID, and just my age and heroes. It's all it is. It's a goddamn scrolling obituary. So I stopped.
Right.
Let alone that it's also like some sort of, cerebral gulag in a catch-22 center. It's a fucking petri dish for our brains.
Yeah.
And even though I know it's my job, talking about, well, here I am like blabbing. I was about to say like talking about me is boring. Meanwhile, I've like dragged out this interview to like, hey, let me tell you what happened back in 1345. I don't know.
I know what you're saying though. It's hard to self-promote. It feels weird and awkward. Is that what you're talking about? As far as talking about yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. It feels to me, and it shouldn't, and it doesn't feel, people like get over that shit, man. And I'm like, yeah. But one of the ways I get over it is by, generating income in other ways.
Yeah.
With other projects that are already being promoted or doing voiceover work, doing ad work when it comes, as long as I'm not like making beats for Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, well, it's like you were saying, feeling a little bit spoiled from when, you were a Pitchfork darling, and I've talked to other people, like I think like the Anti-Con guys felt a similar way when in 2009, 2010 or so, they get abandoned by these kind of hipster media outlets along with the college age crowd that was supporting it,
right.
And
yeah, I definitely don't feel abandoned. I broke out.
Okay.
Like,
right.
And when the 2010 record got the review it did, I was like, no, it's kind of what it deserved. Wasn't happy to get it, but like, and it was also, and the review wasn't that bad. It was like a 6 instead of an 8.
Right.
But I was definitely not like, by no means ever bitter at Pitchfork or the media because I checked out,
Yeah. But also like back in 2000 era, like you didn't need to self-promote. Like you didn't need to go
right
do that as much as you kind of need to as an artist in general nowadays, if you don't have a team behind you, a record label and a promotional machine, which some artists are lucky enough to have. If you don't have that, then you got to be self-promoter, which feels weird. And I think a lot of artists would identify with feeling that same way. You know, it feels dirty.
Yeah, I agree. And it's true. We were spoiled just in terms of the reality of how things were working then. And the generation before us was even more spoiled.
Right.
Like, I mean, you think about like when De La and those guys came out, and like early underground, it wasn't underground hip hop, it was hip hop, but Tribe and all those guys, just the early hip hop DJs toured for you. You know what I'm saying? And people didn't even really go on tour. I mean, I remember seeing De La on their first tour, and they were like mad that they actually had to go play. They're like, this shit's whack. We don't want to be out here. Because back then, cats really didn't even tour that hard. Right. Because the DJs would just play your record, you got promoted, and people bought records.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you were good. The whole reason people were going on tour before were to sell records. Yeah, the DJs are playing them for you. People buy them. You just sit at home and collect for the most part.
Talking about artistic success, it makes me wonder about like the psychology of fame, which is something I think about a lot, and how it seems like in a lot of cases, it seems like just the fame itself kind of destroys an artist's creativity. Yeah. I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't know. I mean, it gets really complicated. Just think about the economic implications of being that famous. You're feeding a lot of people. You know?
Yeah.
You all of a sudden you're responsible for a lot of people. Even if you're like Frank Ocean or something, you can't really be like, okay, I did this way, now I'm going to go make a merengue record. Because everyone's me like, asshole, my kids are going to college in 5 years and I'm your manager. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the biggest issue with people when they get famous, is just that they're financially responsible for others. So if their product bombs, there are people that are hurt, and they care about those people. Well, in an ideal situation, and if they don't care about them people, and then people don't care about them, they're still indentured to that crew. So that's a big reality to that too.
Yeah, it's like an ironic twist that comes along with fortune, I guess, is you think economic freedom is going to really mean freedom, but it becomes the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Nothing tragic in the mix, no mules to carry esoteric burdens. Tragedy falls on leisure time, when sticking assumptions on a Velcro self. Culture is deeper than most waters. Wallow in the bottom mud. You'll grow gills in time.
The Tragic Mulatto was neither track is a sort of negation of the exceptionalism or exceptionalist discussion around being mixed race or whatever. It was sort of my one sentence response to that, and then to drop it, which is just that, there's been mixed race people here 9 months since after 1619, meaning that like, it's not an anomaly. It's a part of it is a normal part of the tragic condition of the United States.
Yeah.
And once I realized that I was not alone, which was early on, that wasn't a real issue, which is why it's called Tragic Mulatto. Was neither tragic or a mule. But that aside, there are reasons why I always felt like an outsider that have much less to do with being mixed race, but more to do with class.
Skydive, do or die, looking high, better shine. Keep the body shining like you never stop at Miami Beach. You got to speak when you got me on the internet. Watch a VIP, cause I never ever let go. Wanna get it, regret it, never, all put together like a credit card number. Go punch in, double chin, find me weapon, make it come from the ball. But you gonna find a lyric next song. I get the numbers quick, I gotta do my
I thought I was gonna be a civil rights lawyer or journalist or Barack Obama,
Right.
That was sort of, and I've taken a really different course,
You became a little disillusioned with politics at a certain point. Is that right?
Yeah, that very clearly.
Yeah.
I was volunteering for a guy named Mel King in Boston who was running for governor. And I was in high school, probably. I was like, I can't remember, junior in high school, I think. And he was up against the Kennedy. And I understood very quickly how much money was playing into that situation.
Yeah.
And realized that it wasn't for me. That, not until there's like genuine equity was I interested to play that sort of political game.
And I should know this from my research, but I forget, what are you teaching?
Well, I was teaching, and okay. I used to teach sort of when I taught at Long Island University when I was still in New York, and I would teach sort of freshman English, basically.
Okay.
I was adjuncting mostly. And then when I moved here, I tried to break into the sort of academic circle, but there's a lot of competition as like an expatriate. There's like, there's only about 30 full-time teaching jobs for expatriate academics in this country. And there's probably about 2,000 American PhDs walking around looking for a job. And also salaries are different here. And I realized I'd make as much money doing music and teaching on the side here than I would if I was teaching full-time here. But I did end up teaching a course at a university here called Sciences Politiques, which is a very good university. And I taught it with a friend of mine, a French friend of mine named Alexandre Pierrepont. And we basically examined the history of music in the African diaspora by fusing cities together, almost making imaginary metropoli. So like, for example, when we studied dub music, we would look at Kingston, Brixton, and North Bronx Flatbush as one city, understanding the sort of the frequency of cultural airwaves, or cultural exchange. Or when we looked at jazz, we looked at Fort-de-France, New Orleans, and Bamako, for example.
I did have in my notes that I wanted to talk to you about fusion, because a lot of your work makes more sense to me when I become aware of your early punk background, and a lot of what you're doing is fusing different genres in interesting new ways. I see, elements of obviously punk and hip hop, folk, blues, jazz. That blues album is really awesome.
Okay.
I don't know if you call it blues, the Reverse Winchester.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I was thinking it more like a folky noise record, but yeah, you could call it blues. I mean, for me, that song, I spent a lot of time in Vermont when I was a kid too.
Okay.
Sort of would bounce between Boston and Vermont. And so I had these real profound memories of being in the countryside. And so it was kind of a cool way to revisit that stuff too.
Tumble in my head where you danced reckless, oh so reckless. I saw you preside over a court of suitors, and you saw me lead an army of joy. I saw you preside over a court of suitors, and you saw me lead an army of joy.
I was wondering if you have conscious thoughts about when you're creating music, just fusion itself, because I feel like a lot of great art is combining past established elements and genres. I don't know if you've considered it much or if it's just a natural thing.
I look at it in the same way I do with improvisation. I try not to spend too much time thinking about it.
Yeah.
Just allow it to happen naturally. And I think the most successful versions have happened naturally. Someone like MIA, for example, when she came out, she wasn't like, all right, I'm going to fuse my Tamil influences with this and that and the other thing, and get Diplo to fuse that. I mean, I don't know, Diplo may have been on some Safari shit, but she was just thinking a certain thing, and it came out. But it came out that way, as a fusion because of the people she grew up with. You can think about Sugar Hill Gang's first record, doom doom doom, doom doom doom. If I remember correctly, it's Liquid that did that bass line. You got all these people just hanging out together. You had downtown. So you had, Jamaicans listening to reggae who were coming downtown. You had brothers who would, coming from the disco background, mixing with punk rockers. So, all of a sudden you get hip hop, which is actually just the fusion of, disco, reggae, and punk rock stuff that was all happening.
Yeah. Once again, you can get a veritable horde of beautiful, exclusive interviews and even more at patreon.com/weirdrap.